Best example I can show on that is if I go straight to the ESX hypervisor. So this is an actual ESX hypervisor that is hosting the other VMs that you see on screen. It detected a bunch of ports, 44380, then a couple of proprietary ones for VMware use. And then you've got port 22. Now, port 22 is not open by default on a hypervisor. That's good practice to have it disabled. I opened that port up on purpose for this demo. But that's the point. It's so hard to contain those services that the manufacturer shuts down the service locally on the actual machine, and you then need to go in there and tweak some stuff on configs and then open it up. That's how critical it is to not expose these ports, because they can be very dangerous. And that's how far they go to get to have a little bit more certainty that you're not going to be exposed. So I went ahead and I read through the help and internet, and I opened up port 22 just so it can be discoverable by BIOS on this demo. But I'm not going to use port 22 for now. I'm going to use port 443 that has been allowed by BIOS on the same IP address for the edge, 10.10.41. So if I go 10.10.41, I'm going to log into that ESX hypervisor. On the typical, I don't have the vSphere client. I use web, but it would have been the same for the vSphere. So I'm going to log in to the dashboard, and as you can see, I'm going to zoom in. It's telling me that SSH is enabled and that I should disable it. It doesn't like it. Of course it doesn't like it. It's a very dangerous port on a very dangerous machine that is wide open to the network, or so the ESX hypervisor thinks, because we have not allowed it on the BIOS layer. And then again, remember, you've got the asset, you've got the BIOS layer, and you've got, let's say you've got a firewall. You can still keep your firewalls, of course. Let's say that you have not blocked anything on the firewall. You've not explicitly blocked it, but even if you blocked it, it doesn't affect the local traffic within that segment. So port 22, it's going to work. So if you don't block it on the segment, and if you don't block it on the asset, then the service is essentially available. So what you do with BIOS is, because you have that layer in between, it doesn't matter what you've done on the firewall side. It doesn't matter that the firewall ACL doesn't apply to local traffic across that segment, and it doesn't matter that you have the port open on the asset, because you've got one more layer in between, which is BIOS, and it is shut down, explicitly shut down on BIOS. So if I want to do, even if I am on the console right here, I'm going to exit this. If I do SSH 10.10.41, sorry, it is going to work because it is mapped to this other machine right here, the multi-one. I'm going to shut it down just to show you graphically. So it is now shut down. So even though I'm connected to the ESX on the 443 right here, and it says that SSH is enabled, it is not enabled at the BIOS layer. So if I do this, then it's not going to work. But the moment I turn it on the BIOS side, then it's going to ask me for credentials. Don't remember the password. Do I? Don't remember the password for this. No. But it doesn't matter. It's beyond the point. I get access to the thing via SSH. And nothing changed right here. This is now technically I should care about this alert because I've enabled it on the BIOS side, which means that it is accessible. But remember that layer 4 only comes after layers 3 and 2. So it is only going to be accessible to the entities that have been allowed outbound access to the overlay on layer 2, and then to the entities that have been allowed access to the demo lab on layer 3. So you're still reducing the attack surface significantly. But even to those entities, SSH is now accessible. The moment you shut it down, this thing is still fine, still accessible. It's still working normally. I'm still going to get the warning, of course. But this is not going to work. SSH is gone, done, closed, even though the warning is still there. And that's the beauty of it. You go from an exposure, an asset exposure, to the entire network, and then you close it to only expose it to microsegments, only to a tiny subset of microsegment, and then only to a certain amount of people or other assets that have access to that machine. And then you close it a little bit more by just the one machine, and then you close it a little bit more to just the one service, and then you close it a little bit more to just only for the 2 hours that my support ticket requires access to this thing. And then I shut it back down. So the attack surface goes from here to a very tiny thread. Never going to go back to zero, but it's going to go to such a small percentage that your risk factors are going to go down significantly. And if you only proactively turn it on, the exposure to something, when you actually need it, for again, like 2 hours and then shut it down, you're getting so close to zero on the actual exposure that it's a pretty significant enhancement from status quo. And that's what we are here to offer. That's the value that Byos brings to the table. It's about reducing the attack surface so much that it is practically impossible to effectively launch an attack against your network. And if they can launch an attack against your network, the chances of it being successful are so low. The chances of them being able to exfiltrate information are low. The chance of them being able to laterally move, pivot, or exploit other machines is so low. The chances of them establishing reverse shells, reverse communications for persistence are so low that if you look at the kill chain completely and you attach every step of the kill chain, you apply a delta or a percentage of likelihood with and without Byos to each one of them, then the total net is going to be so low that is going to make a big impact on your entire risk mitigation strategy. And that's what we do.